Mabon is here, and it's time to celebrate the harvest of the orchard and the vine. And today, we're taking a close look at the god of wine, Dionysus.
Enter a world of enchantment, of enlightenment, megsmagicalmansion.
Come, whoever you are, to Meg's Magical Mansion,
A virtual guesthouse for spiritual wayfarers.
a place where the ordinary becomes magical,
Where wisdom is yours for the asking.
and where your higher nature is just a wish away. Thanks for joining us here today at Meg's Magical Mansion. I'm Meg with my fluffy friend Miss Alice Poopers, and of course we are joined by the scrumptious Miss Parfait.
Charmed.
And today we're getting excited because we're getting ready to celebrate Mabon.
You know, that's right. Mabon is my favorite sabbat on the wheel of the year. And you know, it is party time! It's a time of year to celebrate the harvest and all things divine.
Mabon is the second of 3 harvest festivals because last month in August we celebrated Lammas, also known as Lugnasa, and that is a celebration of grains of the field. And coming up on October 31st, it's Samhain, when we celebrate the harvest of things like gourds, squashes like pumpkins. It's a spooky time too because it's the Witch's New Year.
We love spooky times around here, especially this time of year. And you know, right now it is Mabon, and that's the second harvest sabbat. And that actually falls on September 22nd, which is also the Autumnal Equinox, a time of great balance.
It's when we celebrate the orchard and the vine. Things like apples and pears, berries and nuts, grapes and winemaking.
Oh, did somebody say winemaking? You know, that's why it's my favorite holiday.
Obviously, we've done some episodes in the past on Mabon, and I'll make sure to link one of those at the end of this one for you. And for those of you who are in the Southern Hemisphere celebrating Litha right now, happy Litha! And please check out our Pagan Fun playlist because we've got some episodes on Litha there for you.
But today we're going to talk more about one of the most important deities that Meg and I both commune with, especially during this time, Mabon. And that is the Greek god known as Dionysus, known to the Romans as Bacchus.
Dionysus is a god of pleasure and fertility.
He's also associated with crazy wild partying and even with madness.
But with all gods and deities, there's a lot more to Dionysus than initially meets the eye.
And while we all know him as the ultimate party boy, he's also often depicted as being an older god too.
So let's celebrate Mabon by learning about this fascinating god and the mythology he's inspired.
Well, I'll drink to that. Cheers!
Dionysus, the Greek god of wine, fertility, revelry, theater, and even madness. And Dionysus is really known for his dual nature because he represents both the joy and the madness. You often see him pictured as an effeminate party boy and also as a wise and jolly old sage. And even in Dionysus's madness, there was duality. He is associated with the concept of divine possession or religious ecstasy, that idea of bringing holy ecstasy to your followers and cruel revenge to anyone who crosses you. So he's associated with a form of punitive madness, because if you rejected Dionysus or his divinity, he would inflict a violent madness upon you, leading to destructive acts and a terrifying loss of control on the part of the person he inflicted it on. But he's also associated with a divine madness because his followers had a form of madness that offered them a path to liberation, an ecstatic spiritual connection. It let them transcend their earthly bodies and limitations and find a state of union with the divine. So, at Mabon, the dual nature of Dionysus is very fitting, because with Dionysus we have 2 sides to every coin we flip. So let's get into the story of Dionysus. There are a number of different birth and origin stories that floated around about him, but the most prevalent one is that he is the son of Zeus and the mortal Semele. Semele is the daughter of King Cadmus, who was the king of Thebes. This makes Dionysus the only Olympian with a mortal parent. There are some stories that say his mother was either Demeter or Persephone, but the vast majority of stories list Semele as his mother. Dionysus is known as the twice-born, and this is because Zeus, of course, was married to Hera, but he is often known for cavorting about, and he fell in love with the beautiful princess Semele. And they had a very passionate love affair, and he would come to her in human form. But he told her who he truly was, but he couldn't reveal himself in all of his godlike power and glory, the thunderbolts and all, because it would be way too much for mortal eyes to handle. So he only could show himself to her in a mortal form. But of course, his wife Hera finds out that not only is he having a romantic liaison with Semele, but that she is carrying Zeus's child. So, what does she do? She disguises herself as Semele's very friendly older servant lady and persuades the pregnant Semele to force her lover to prove he really is Zeus by just insisting that he appear in his godlike form. And after she throws a little tantrum and has a hissy fit, Semele's lute just insists he has to show his true self. Zeus complies. But when he shows his true godlike form, his power is too great for the mortal Semele, who becomes just blasted with thunderbolts and bursts into flames. However, Zeus is able to save his son, Dionysus, by sewing him up in his thigh, keeping him there until Dionysus reaches maturity. So Dionysus is known as being twice born. But as a god, Dionysus is known for his association with grapes and winemaking. He is the god of wine, the grape harvest, and the whole process of winemaking, which apparently he invented. And because Mabon is the season of grape harvesting and winemaking, Dionysus is the perfect deity to work with at this time of year. Because of that seasonal connection, many modern pagans and Wiccans honor Dionysus during Mabon as a representative of the harvest and all of the delicious bounty of the wine vine. But both the Mabon festival and the worship of Dionysus share these themes of feasting, harvest, and the transformative powers of grapes. And the ancient Greeks also celebrated the autumn equinox with wine, and in Athens, the Oskophoria was the name of the grape harvest festival. It was held in what would have been late September, and this festival was all about Dionysus, and men would carry grape-heavy vines through the town in a big parade, and it would be followed by a lot of drinking and singing and general merrymaking. And Dionysus, as I said, was the one who showed the people how to cultivate grapes and how to make the wine. And the priestesses of Dionysus would mix that sacred drink with various herbs and other substances which would enhance the ecstatic state. And women especially were drawn to following Dionysus and were a big part of the celebrations and the deep mysteries behind the wild rituals. And there were groups of women who would literally follow around and worship Dionysus, called the Maenads or the wild women. And there was a lot of uninhibited partying and celebrating at their ecstatic gatherings. But according to some ancient writers, these women were able to just escape the pressures of their daily life or their humdrum life or whatever their sort of daily routine had become monotonous, they could take off, run away for a week, a month, or more, and just join up with these wild women who did, let me tell you what, they ran completely wild, totally free, romping through the forest, enjoying this sort of riotous dancing, ecstatic singing, and drinking out in the wilderness. And people would leave food and drink offerings for them, because heaven forbid if you were caught up or trespassed into their wild rituals, because they were viewed as sort of sacred madwomen by both religious law and popular sentiment of the day. So no harm was ever to come to any of them. And if a woman felt she had been wild long enough, and she had worked all of this out of her system, she could just apparently go right on home, pick up her life just as if nothing had happened. No questions were ever asked, and her dignity was kept intact. And Dionysus was also followed by the satyr. And the satyr is a male nature spirit with ears and tails like a horse, as well as usually a very exaggerated erection. And early artistic representations sometimes show the satyrs with horse-like legs, but by about the 6th century BC, they are more often shown with human legs. They're really horribly hideous, but they're also somewhat comical. They have hair somewhat like a mane. Their faces are very animalistic or bestial. They have these little pug snubby noses, and they're almost always shown a la mode in the nude. Satyrs were shown with their wild partying. They were known as lovers of wine, music. They loved dancing, and they certainly loved some of those wild women. And they were companions of Dionysus and were believed to sort of inhabit the local areas such as woodlands and pastures and mountains and forests, and they would attempt to seduce nymphs and mortal women. But they didn't usually, that kind of guy doesn't usually get too far. But they are often shown as being wild, horny party guys. But of course, there is a darker side to Dionysus, because he also has an association with the underworld. There are myths where he goes to the underworld to rescue his mother Semele and brings her back. There are also the myths that he is a rescuer of souls, that he has the ability to come and go in the underworld. And that gives him the role of a god who could sort of rise above death and bring souls back to the surface. And he is a god of rebirth because he is twice born. So a lot of cults dedicated to him were involved with rebirth and connecting him to the cycles of death and life. And Dionysus is also the god of theater. And this connection to the theater comes from his followers' wild, crazy, wine-fueled festivals. And these festivals often involved theatrical performances. Things like comedies and tragedies and Greek theater kind of came out of a lot of these festivals, which is how Dionysus became the god of the theater. So, Dionysus is a god of great duality. Just like actors can put on a mask and play another character, we see him as both a young, handsome man. We see him as an old, jolly old god. We see him young and partying. We see him as someone of death and life and the afterlife and the underworld. So we see him as someone who represents both sides of madness, punishing someone by making them be mad, or ecstatic, worshipful forms of madness. We see a lot of connections that tie him into Mabon, such as the grapes, the wine, the idea of the dual nature of this time of year. It is a time of balance, but it's when you see both sides of the coin very visible. It's equal day, it's equal night. So it's when all of your madness can kind of come to a point of balance. So I hope everyone has a wonderful Mabon and that you all find that balance in your madness between the joyful and the punitive, between the good and the bad. Remember, this is the witch's Thanksgiving, so showing gratitude for the harvests we reap and giving thanks for everything on our tables, the wine we drink, our prosperity, our good health, our loved ones is so important right now. And I want to wish every one of you a very happy Mabon.
Well, we hope you enjoyed that look at the god Dionysus.
You know, it's a great cautionary tale carrying on with those married men, ladies. You know, that Hera was not standing for it. Nobody's going to mess with her Zeus and get away with it.
You know, that's one of the things I love about the Greek pantheon. Honey, it's better than a soap opera or a telenovela. It's juicy.
Yes, the tea was always piping hot on Mount Olympus, let me tell you.
And we hope you all have a very happy Mabon. And remember, in the words of Buddha, 1,000 candles can be lit from a single candle.
And the life of that candle will never be shortened.
Happiness doesn't decrease by being shared. So
thank you for sharing your time and attention here with us at Meg's Magical Mansion. Till next time. Toodles!